What's up, Shred Sexies? Welcome back. Down to the fingers, carrying on with our creative practice exercises here in a minor key now. Of course, this is the key factor is I'm now employing all of the necessary music skills to get maximum practice value. Just practicing stuff mindlessly up and down the fretboard with scales, arpeggios, sweeps. Doesn't even matter if you're going really fast without something to contrast it, without these little musical elements. Setting things up like a target position like we're going to talk about. That is the lesson. Anybody can learn these shapes or figure them out for themselves. What you're not learning is how to use them in a musical context for maximum effect, right? So essentially, I chose a minor key, in this case Dorian. The parent key is G major, so we're playing A Dorian. That's a minor triad, right, as a chord, as an arpeggio. So I use the G type as a minor from the Cage system. I know, madness with a scale fragment to essentially set up the root. But here's the thing, if I go directly to the root right away and just play the arpeggio, it sounds like shit. But if I slip down a half step and then play the diminish from Locrian, filling in a few notes, obviously, just doing 3 notes per string stuff here, so it's effectively 3 in 1, no big deal. You get this amazing effect, obviously, where it perfectly sets up the A minor, the Dorian, for you to then leap off and do that little sweeping idea. Right now, with the sweeping one, the key here is the last note. If I were to end on almost any note inside that Dorian position as a triad arpeggio or as the minor 7, it's not going to sound good and the effect will be ruined. So I have to move to another note that's going to basically help me close out this idea. It's that last note. Don't just land on the sour note of tension. Find the right note and be like, when I'm playing in the Dorian position and I'm using this arpeggio, this triad arpeggio or the dominant 7 as a sweep, I want to move up to this note or down to this note or whatever it is, right? To end it. That is absolutely key. I see that all the time with people. Don't land on a note and just be like, wow, okay, that's really tension filled. And then just stay there. Move to the one that releases the tension, obviously, and then practice to just end on that note in the first place, right? So that's a big one. Obviously, it's the same idea here for the first and second inversion of this A minor 7 sort of arpeggio. If I just do the standard triads, right, in the first and second inversion, it sounds very rudimentary, okay? So it just absolutely kills it. So the point being here is I can't obviously leave it as just the triads. I have to add this extra note. That's the lesson, where it sounds like it's really sort of, you know, blocky and the, you know, the transitions are very, very sort of, you know, acute. You got to smooth that stuff off. You can do that by just increasing the complexity of the arpeggio by adding a note here and there, right? In this case, the obvious one is just move from 3 notes to 4. So you went from the triad system to the minor 7 system, right? So that's the lesson, where it sounds very, very sort of rough like that. Smooth it out, however you got to do that. And of course, again, I'm moving to a position here like the minor pentatonic, E minor pentatonic in this case. So instead of just jumping right into it, which would almost kill the effect, instead, I set it up again using dominant 7, half step down from the Aeolian position, borrowed from, of course, the harmonic minor system. Okay, so technically the sharp 5 if you're asking, but that's the thing, is to set up the minor pentatonic to sound even better, to make it hit harder. I do this extra step here by setting up the dominant 7, a half step down from Locrian again, both diminished and dominant 7 now being employed. It's one of the most useful systems like that particular position, Locrian, in all of music for the guitar stuff. So I highly recommend you either figure it out or get them. I think I have lessons on it where I show them too. So just look for the one where it's like an arpeggio workout or some nonsense and you'll be off to the races kind of deal. So that's, you know, the big reveal there. Is essentially it's not me just playing in a unidimensional type fashion. Instead, I'm trying to mix and match elements. I see the fretboard broken up into various systems, the pentatonic system, the triad arpeggio system, the cage system for chords and arpeggios, the dominant 7 arpeggio system, in this case minor 7, right? And all of its inversions based around the idea that the second degree here, A minor, is technically, I'm seeing that as the natural minor of C major. Now listen, you're not doing that conversion. You're just like, when I play this minor triad, that's the starting position of the entire sequence for the minor arpeggios, right? Both up and down. It's true for the second degree of a major scale. It's true for the third degree, and it's true for the sixth degree. They're all the same. Now, how you use them in the context of like some sort of harmonic background is up to you and, you know, flavor to taste kind of deal. Yeah, that was right. But, you know, like, you got to start experimenting, and that's just it. Those are the tension sort of tools, if you will. Like when I do the half step down to create tension with diminished and dominant 7, you can just overlap it, ascend using the more tension-filled idea, borrowed from one of the other sort of positions, either the Phrygian or Aeolian in this case, and then resolve that tension to the actual one where you actually move down to a more stable note. Obviously, Dorian in and of itself is very unstable. It's going to pull either to Phrygian or more likely down to Ionian, just like 7 pulls up to 1, right? Locrian moves up to Ionian. So that musical gravity is incredibly important and all the rest of it. So don't lose sight of these big ticket items when you go into these practice exercises. It's not just about playing the arpeggio sequences and mixing, matching with scales and all the rest of it. You see me do that, of course, and get a little carried away, but you know what I mean? That's just it. That's just me kind of messing around and having fun. And that's just the point is once you get sort of like raising your level of playing and all the rest of it, you'll be doing the same thing. But you'll notice from the main example and from most of the examples lately, I'm trying to sort of, you know, subdue the shred a little bit more to try to find better note selection and use these elements more cohesively, caged, and the arpeggios and scales and all the rest of that to sort of make my music more impactful and meaningful. And that's what you should be trying to do too. And that's all the steps, right? Having the general overarching idea, you know, major, minor, diminished, or dominant 7th flavored type idea. And then you're going to move into the specific tools you'd be using to create that vibe, right? If you're doing like a dominant 7 thing, you're going to be using enclosures and jazz lines and stuff like that, especially arpeggios. So there it is, right? There's a whole different thought process that goes into that compared to, you know, using diminished, whether it's to set up other sort of target chords, you know, using the diminished to enhance the resolution of moving to this chord, or just pure diminished, just playing diminished over everything with the whole tone scale and the whole half tone scale and a bunch of diminished arpeggios. It all fits in there, but of course, you got to sort of set the parameters for your practice session that makes sense for you. So if you do the whole neck, that's great. If not, start with just 2 positions and 2 different systems like the pentatonics and some triad arpeggios, or the 3 notes per string, pentatonics, and then triad arpeggios. And then, of course, 3 notes per string, pentatonics, the triad arpeggios, and then dominant 7, all in the particular positions, and mixing and matching them together. And then just moving between position 1 and position 2 and position 3 and all the rest of it, until you're doing stuff like that. And then, of course, you just keep doing that over and over again, but you just change the parameters. You're like, okay, I want to create something weird with Lydian. Okay, now I want to get much darker, have this sort of Middle Eastern flavor with Phrygian. You kind of get where I'm going with this. First with no music, then with just 1 chord, then with a backing track. I think that covers it. No need for any more chit chat. Let's get into these videos. The arpeggio sequences, the scales, arpeggios and scales together as sort of like a practice idea, and then the original intro played slowly. Of course, just start practicing 1 or 2 elements from it. Another perfect example, and just come back when necessary to build up the next section until you can do the whole thing and then come up with your own. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate every single one of you. Good luck. Remember, believe in yourself, apply yourself diligently, take on manageable sized chunks, digest until you can basically play it, and then move on to the next one, and then attach those two pieces together. Get good at putting those two together, and then just keep doing that. Eventually, it becomes a sort of seamless process, and you're improvising on your own. See you in the next one.